Lijep pozdrav u još jednom UNIDU Interviewu. Ja sam Klara Zuanić. Ovaj put ugostili smo profesora iz područja društvenih mreža sa Sveučilišta Florida, Andrewa Selepaka. Naravno, razgovarat ćemo na engleskom jeziku. Hello and welcome to our TV studio.
How are you doing today?
So you are a professor of social media, which is a title that we here in Croatia, I'm sure are not familiar with. So what exactly do you do?
So mostly I teach a course on the impact of social media on different industries, whether it's journalism, entertainment, public relations, marketing. And then my students during the semester will work on a semester-long campaign where they raise money for a nonprofit or a local organization. And they do a real-world, real-time campaign, creating content, running the campaign. And at the end of the semester, the goal is for them to raise money for this organization to help out. Sometimes it's for homelessness, sometimes it is for animal shelters, sometimes it could be for different women's groups in our town back in Florida. So it's just an opportunity for them to learn about social media and then use it in the real world to develop a campaign using social media.
So also that is not a title which we had like maybe 10 or 20 years ago. How does one become a professor of social media?
There was a time when I was the youngest person and they were like, "You're the youngest person, can you teach social media?" And I said, "Sure." And then since then, just teaching it, doing media interviews about it, doing a lot more research about it, and also participating in my own college's social media, running the accounts, helping with content for the accounts, and then simply advising students who are now working in social media for the different companies.
How do you educate yourself on social media and pop culture?
Oh, and pop culture. That's a whole separate category. So for pop culture, I consume a lot of media. I watch a lot of TV shows, watch a lot of movies, watch a lot of YouTube videos, TikTok videos. There's sort of a constant consumption of media. Sometimes I get asked to comment about a particular artist or actor or even a movie or a film. And then I just personally keep up with a lot of things. I teach a class in sports as well, so I'm watching a lot of sports. I'm keeping up with a lot of it on X, Twitter. I'm consuming a lot of content, reading a lot of content. But I like it. It's fun. Like there's much worse things I could be doing in life.
I'm glad you mentioned that you educate yourself on TikTok as well, because there's can we even call it a situation in the United States, considering TikTok, where there was a bill was passed, and it may lead to banning TikTok. So I obviously, because I'm also on TikTok, I know what's going on amongst the young people. How are people in America, all generations, taking it?
Well, I'd like to think I'm a young person too. So maybe we're both young people on that. No, but to a large extent, I think there's been a little bit more concern than there should be, partially because TikTok isn't banned. They either have to sell or it will be banned. And there's lots of American investors ready to kind of come in and buy TikTok. At the same time, if for TikTok's perspective, they're going to tie it up in the courts for a long time and say this is a violation of all sorts of different things that would prevent this forced sale of the company. But the bottom line is that ByteDance, which is obviously a Chinese company, it has strong connections to the CCP, the Communist Chinese Party. Even if they were to allow TikTok to be sold, it wouldn't include their algorithm. And that's pretty much the most significant thing about the platform, is how that algorithm operates, how it's so addictive. And in selling it, if they were forced to sell the algorithm as well, then there would probably be a lot of information revealed about how that algorithm works and how it feeds, particularly in the American market, certain types of content that is not actually seen in China, but only seen to other countries.
A lot of young people, all generations actually, educate themselves also on TikTok about, happenings of the world. And TikTok sort of became also a media of sorts where, you know, young people get all the news in the palm of their hands as quickly as they happen. So especially because we are now in the super election year, would banning TikTok maybe lead to young people, or because we know that young people are not interested in politics that much, would it lead to, you know, their interest in politics declining as well?
Specifically in the United States?
Maybe even if in the European Union. Okay.
Well, so nothing can happen until January. So for the U.S., the 2024 presidential election will have already happened. So it won't influence the election in terms of it not being there come election time and for young people to get their news. And obviously the ban doesn't impact the EU. The EU hasn't done anything. But India actually has banned TikTok in their country. And India, obviously, the huge population, and they've been fine. They've managed. They've created their own domestic version of TikTok, which has grown in tremendous popularity. Pakistan tried to ban it and then decided not to. So it's not unprecedented for a country, India being a huge country, to ban TikTok. And at the same time, TikTok is not something that exists in China. They have their own version, which is vastly different than what we get in the United States. So I don't think it will have any impact on the EU elections. I don't think it'll have any impact on the US elections. And even if it was to reach that deadline in January when they have to divest or they have to basically get banned, because it's going to go into the U.S. courts, it could take a year, 2 years before anything's finally decided, unless the company simply decides, well, it's just not worth it. But because of the information they're able to collect on users and because of the influence they have on users with their messaging and how they can manipulate the algorithm to give users certain content over other types of content, I don't see China wanting to get rid of that ability to manipulate a population anytime soon.
Circling back to professor of social media part, you here in the University of Dubrovnik, you held a workshop about social media. So, you know, considering us students will soon be applying for many jobs, can you describe what social media should look like, social media profiles should look for, for a student?
Sure. So I think there's a lot of different parts. The most significant thing, and I teach my students about sort of personal branding and reputation management, especially with their entire digital presence. So for their digital presence, it's not just social media, but also, you know, any websites that they have created, any blogs that they have done. One of the things from that part is I tell my students to have their own personal website, where they can put their work, where they can have their resume, where they can have their social media accounts available on there. And it's a great way to give them a Google search result, so that when a potential employer or anybody who might be potentially offering them an internship or grad school, they're able to find them on this website. And because they have complete control over it, they decide what goes on there, what is said about them. It's a great way to kind of put the best you out there in one particular spot that's easily found through Google. Social media, more or less the same thing. You know, to think about with your online presence, don't have anything where you're cursing, don't have anything where you're doing anything illegal. I mean, these are the very basic, simple things. I even tell my students, as we've already established, I'm also a young person, but even in the United States, I'm old enough to drink. But I don't have pictures of me, partying and everything else, even though, despite being a young person, I am old enough to drink. And just the kind of the basic things, but then once you do the basic things, including deleting stuff that you may have posted when you were younger, you yourself are a couple years younger than I am, there might be things that you have put on social media 10 years ago when you had vastly different interests. You were much less mature and professional than now, that doesn't really represent you now. And it could be something little. Oh, you were a huge fan of One Direction 10 years ago, and you posted a bunch of pictures about how much you love Harry Styles.
Did you Google me before?
but it might not represent who you are now as a very professional person. So it's not necessarily we delete stuff that we know is obviously bad, but maybe it just doesn't represent us now. And then once you kind of delete the bad stuff, then it's about adding good stuff. So you and I doing this interview right now, you look very professional, you're doing a very professional interview. This would make a good image for your social media, for your Instagram account of, look at me, I'm a very professional reporter, I can do this type of thing. And that's the image that you want to project. So we look at it as, and when I teach my students, I always ask them, if I come across your social media, if I come across your digital presence, should I hire you? Would I hire you if I saw what you've been posting? And I look at it from the vantage point of you're going to want a job someday, and there could be hundreds of people all applying for one job. And you can have all the skills that you want. You can make it down to the final 3 finalists. Then they're going to start looking up your social media, your digital presence. Is there anything there that would make them go, we would have hired her, but look at what she does on social media? And some of that can even be you post too much. We've seen where you have companies that go, do they have time for anything else considering how much they post? So there's a lot of different things that you can do, not just the obvious of don't show yourself doing anything illegal drugs, drinking, partying too much, but some of the basic things of like, okay, once we eliminate that, then sort of the step 2 is, of what is there, does it still represent you? Does it represent a professional, hireable you? And then once you take step 2, step 3 of now let me continue to show and demonstrate I'm a person that you want to work for you. I'm a person you want to work with. I am professional. I am hireable. I'm an overall good person. And then sometimes throw in a couple things to demonstrate not just professional skills, but you're an overall good person. So you're doing charity work. You're doing stuff with, animals. You're doing stuff with, in the U.S. we have things like Habitat for Humanity. We have animal shelters, women's groups, homeless shelters. You doing stuff that demonstrates you care about others and you're an overall good person. And when you do that, people are kind of more willing to take a chance on you because they think not only do you have skills, you're a good person. And for the most part, we want to be around good people. So it's sort of a multi-steps that I think young people should do so they demonstrate digitally, I'm somebody you want to hire and have work for you.
Well, I certainly took notes, and I hope my colleagues did as well. Thank you so much for being my host today.
Thank you.
Bio je to profesor iz područja društvenih mreža sa Sveučilišta Florida, Andrew Selepak. Ja sam bila Klara Zuanić, a do nekog drugog UNIDU intervjua i neke druge prilike lijep pozdrav.